Chamberlain and Shaquille O'Neal overpowered opponents with size and strength. But Kareem Abdul-Jabbar ruled the middle in a different way, using agility and finesse. Kareem was a true giant of the game, and he's featured this week on Vintage NBA.
Yes, basketball has changed. It's always been a great game, but now it has a new spirit.
He dunks like Dr. J. He might be the new Iceman.
The modern day Wilt Chamberlain.
He looked like Magic Johnson.
The future has arrived.
You are watching what greatness is all about.
Hello again, everyone, and welcome to Vintage NBA. I'm Robin Roberts. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar set a standard of excellence that is unmatched in NBA history. And over the next hour, we'll look back at his incredible career. Abdul-Jabbar had perhaps the game's most devastating weapon, the skyhook, and he used it to become the NBA's all-time leading scorer. During his last two seasons, Kareem's Lakers faced the Pistons in the finals. And watching was a young fan in Detroit who grew up to become an NBA All-Star. He's Chris Webber of the Sacramento Kings. And this week, Chris is in the chair.
The captain, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, number 33. Skyhook goggles and low-top sneakers.
I don't believe my eyes. What a play. Oh, what a pass to Cooper, who scored. How did he see it?
I think that every team needs an anchor, and I think on that team he was their anchor. It wasn't showtime with 30 seconds to go in a tie game. They're slowing the ball up and throwing it right into Kareem.
The ball goes into Kareem at 4. I don't think Kareem knows it. 3. Now he knows it. A 15-footer. Good! It's into Kareem. Kareem swing left. Right hand 12-footer. Good!
He was just the stabilizer and the foundation of their whole franchise and dynasty. Kareem was definitely a physical player, but he revolutionized the center position, I think, with his finesse. I think that it was unique to see a big man with so much finesse as he had. I remember him just making one of the toughest shots in the game, and that's the skyhook. He let you bump him, and he just took his time and took a step out and gave you a hook shot from 15 feet out.
That's a hook shot. Unbelievable.
Oh, my. What a hook shot.
What a shot. He flipped it over his head, and the darn thing went right through. 7 seconds. Pickle. Kareem with a big pressure shot.
I've never seen anyone make 2 skyhooks in a game. I've never seen that in the NBA. And actually, if you take a skyhook and miss it, someone will think you're not being serious because of how difficult that shot is. I think the unique thing about his skyhook is that he brings his arm all the way out, and with his wrist, he flicks it. And he doesn't cheat, where a lot of us just come up and try to guide the ball in. He really shoots the ball and follow through. It's like a jump shot. I used to have a pair almost like this in school. I wanted to be like Kareem. I wonder why he used to have them. Did he used to get hit in the eye or something like that? Those are the original ones? We used to wear those like 88 just to go to parties. These look like the ski goggles, like he was going skiing after the game or something. Maybe I need to wear them. It'll help my shot a little bit more.
Webber, with a lot of room to work, goes to the jump hook, rolls off the iron, out the right side. Again, a tough roll.
I define courage as recognizing when something needs to be done and doing it, even when there are easier choices. I think what he's saying here is that basically courage is defined at the hardest times of your life, not just when you're sitting on top, and that's what he respects the most. And his book has a lot of positive stories and shares a lot of good things, and I think that's why we respect Kareem the man, not just for what he did on the basketball court, but for things like this. The one thing that I admire about Kareem the most is his championships and how he did it on each level. He was a high school legend, and how he went for Coach Wooden and kept on winning. And then finally how he won with the Lakers. Playing 20 years, that means that he got every single inch of championship that he could out of his body. If I had that many championship rings, I don't know if my friends would like me that much because I have a lot to talk about.
Chris and Kareem had similar stories in at least one respect. Both were #1 draft picks who were traded early in their careers. And it worked out well for both of them. Abdul-Jabbar won 5 NBA titles in Los Angeles, while Webber sparked the resurgence of the Kings, leading them to 2 consecutive playoff appearances. We'll have much more on Kareem's professional and personal journey when we continue in just a moment.
Kareem was one of the most beautiful players I've ever watched in my life. He had grace, he had style. He had the greatest shot that the game has ever seen.
I have never seen an offensive weapon in any sport like that sky hook.
He was making hook shot. Right-handed, we knew he could shoot the hook shot. Well, this day he makes 4 left-handed hook shots, then another right-handed hook shot, another hook shot, another one. It got so bad, man, I went home, I was laying in bed, I was dreaming, oh no, not another hook shot, no, not another one.
Well, if it's any consolation to Darryl, there are many other players who had that same nightmare. For 2 decades, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar unleashed his skyhook on opposing centers. But it wasn't just the shot that made him so effective. It was his rare combination of size, skill, and agility. During his career with the Bucks and the Lakers, Kareem was a dominating force. And in 1984, he broke Wilt Chamberlain's all-time scoring record, fittingly, with his trademark shot.
Magic right side. Kareem posts up. They go to Kareem. Kareem backs here. Hook shot. It's up. It's good. In the history of professional basketball, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar.
In his 20-year career, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar not only rewrote the NBA record book, he changed the way the game is played.
Traditionally, a center was post up, robotic, catch it, pass, pick, and don't go outside of about 8 feet. Kareem came in and he could shoot a sky hook from 10 feet out.
Kareem was one of the most beautiful players I've ever watched in my life. He had grace, he had style. He had the greatest shot that the game has ever seen.
I have never seen an offensive weapon in any sport like that sky hook. That sky hook was just poetry in motion.
See, when he get down real low, that means he's mad. He's gonna score 30 or 40 tonight. Now, when he stands straight up, he might only give you 25. But if he down low, you're gonna get 40. It didn't matter if you had 3 guys on him. The whole team counted 2 points. So beautiful.
Growing up as Lou Alcindor in Upper Manhattan, he literally stood head and shoulders over everyone else. As a high school star at Power Memorial in the early 60s, he learned the fine points of the game by studying Bill Russell and the Boston Celtics.
I watched them play a good 20 or 30 times in Madison Square Garden. I used to play a lot of doubleheaders there at that time. And you talk about professional seminars. They'd get the ball in transition like that when he'd block a shot and beat you down the court and get a high percentage shot. That strategy is basically John Wooden's strategy.
Under legendary coach John Wooden at UCLA, Alcindor continued his basketball education, and he became the nation's top college player, leading his team to 3 consecutive national championships.
This 7-foot, 1.5-inch giant is largely responsible for the unbelievable records the Bruins have set in the last 2 seasons. He's agile for his size and a superstar in the making.
The willingness to sacrifice individual talent for the goal. I mean, that was what I learned in high school. That's what I learned from John Wooden.
Selected #1 by Milwaukee in 1969, Alcindor quickly achieved NBA stardom. He led the Bucks to the title in 1971 in just their 3rd season of existence.
He was just so fluid. He was so unstoppable. He had the shot that nobody could deal with, the sky hook. Anytime he wanted to score, he could score.
He had established himself as the game's best young player. Yet Alcindor, preferring solitude, shied away from the spotlight.
He was different. You know, I mean, he brought a different mentality into the game as a person.
that we had never seen before.
He had a jazz man's mentality. He was very kind of aloof in the way that, and I think very much self-conscious about being an artist.
Converting to Islam, he changed his name to Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, meaning noble servant. The move further confounded many fans.
I think that created some public misunderstanding of him being aloof.
America is about individuals, and I just did not come from the same mold as most individuals in this country, and that was considered in various ways at that time, sometimes with alarm. I remember reading No Man is an Island, but Kareem gave it a shot. That kind of summed me up in those days.
After joining the Lakers, Kareem, like everyone else, was overwhelmed by the arrival of Magic Johnson in 1979.
Ford sends it to Kareem. Sky hook up and good. Lakers win. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar has given the Los Angeles Lakers a victory. And Magic Johnson is out there celebrating like they just won the NCAA championship.
Say, Buck, we got 81 more games. Quit choking me.
Led by Magic's infectious enthusiasm and Kareem's stoic pragmatism, the Lakers created Showtime, demolishing opponents with their vaunted fast break.
Our whole goal was to run you into the ground. And the big fella be down court just waving at, okay, whenever y'all can't get a basket, then call me down.
I was a fossil from the earlier age, playing with younger players, I guess.
With Magic running the break and Kareem manning the middle, the Lakers won 5 NBA championships during the 1980s. And in the process, they helped Abdul-Jabbar find inner peace.
It's funny, the last 10 years were much better than the first 10 years because we were enjoying some professional success. That deflected a lot of criticism and in turn made it easier for me to smile and, you know, fit in.
As his remarkable career began drawing to a close, Kareem finally received the appreciation of fans around the league who saluted him for all that he'd accomplished.
It was wonderful. I really enjoyed it. I had no idea how many people's lives it touched until after I retired.
Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, to me, was the greatest player to ever play professional basketball.
By the time he left the game in 1989, Kareem had compiled a staggering list of achievements. Among them, a record 19 All-Star selections, 6 MVP awards, and 6 NBA championships. He scored more points and blocked more shots than anyone in league history. But his talents weren't confined to the basketball court. No, no, no. When we come back, Kareem goes Hollywood. First, here's a look at what was happening during his rookie year, 1969. Welcome back, everyone, to Vintage NBA. When you look at Kareem Abdul-Jabbar's career, what stands out isn't just his greatness, but the fact that he sustained it for such a long period of time. And if you log on to NBA.com, we see that Kareem played 20 seasons, second only to Robert Parrish on the all-time list. He played from 1969 to 1989, and during his career, the times were a-changin' in many different ways. For example, in those 2 decades, the United States had 6 presidents, from Lyndon Johnson to George Bush. Music evolved from folk and rock in the 60s to the disco era of the 70s, to the beginnings of rap in the 80s. Of course, fashion styles changed, from tie-dyed shirts and bell-bottoms to leisure suits and platform shoes, and then skinny ties. Then things came back full circle when bell-bottoms came back. Fortunately, the leisure suits haven't. Kareem started in the time of hippies and left in the age of yuppies. The top-rated TV show in Kareem's rookie season was Ronan Martin's Laugh-In. When he retired, it was Roseanne. The #1 movie star in 1969 was Paul Newman, and by '89, it was Jack Nicholson. During that time, Kareem himself was learning the movie and entertainment business from both sides of the camera. He pursued his interest while spending most of his career near Hollywood, first at UCLA and later on with the Lakers. Kareem combined his interest in movies with his interest in martial arts when he co-starred with karate expert Bruce Lee in the action flick Game of Death. But everyone seemed to get a kick out of his role as a co-pilot in the 1979 comedy Airplane. Kareem then landed in a different kind of role when he began posing questions to other athletes as a TV sports reporter. Moving to the other side of the camera, he founded his own production company, where one of his first films dealt with the civil rights movement of the 1960s and starred James Earl Jones.
I'm very happy that Kareem has found a way to take all that energy and also to bring his ethnic awareness and his American awareness to help deal with the stories that are unsung.
For Kareem, he found the role of producer as exciting as manning the pivot.
Well, each has its challenges, and I think each has its own special rewards. A job well done, though, is a kind of universal satisfaction.
Long a student of history, Kareem devoted several of his film projects to historical subjects, including a film on an all-black Army battalion in World War II. He also wrote a book called Black Profiles in Courage, focusing on the contributions of African Americans. Kareem made plenty of history himself during his playing days, including the day in 1972 when he played in one of the NBA's most famous regular season games. And you'll see it. Back in 1972, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and his Milwaukee Bucks were the defending NBA champs. But the Lakers were the talk of the league and the entire sports world for that matter. Los Angeles won 33 consecutive games, a pro sports record, and they took their streak into Milwaukee in what was billed as the Dream Game. It's the subject of this week's Airwave Archive. The date, January 9th, 1972. The place, Milwaukee Arena. And here's the call from Keith Jackson and Bill Russell.
Our officials for this afternoon's ball game, two of the best in the business, Richie Powers and Mendy Rudolph. The tip, and Milwaukee controls it. The Bucks are wearing white. Number 14 is John McLaughlin. Number 1 is Oscar Robertson. Number 10 is Bobby Dandridge. Number 18 is Curtis Perry. Lou Alcindor, as he was known last year, his official name now is Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Underneath the shot of the corner, but Dandridge is good. So Jim McMillan comes up court as Milwaukee takes the ball. Gail Goodrich, number 25 for the Lakers in blue. John McLaughlin on him. Gale spins and shoots and misses. An air ball cleared by Dandridge of Milwaukee. The Bucks getting the first points, and they have the ball now as Oscar brings it down. It is Jerry West. He missed the shot. The tip is good. And Jabbar will get credit for the basket, and Milwaukee jumps to a 4-0 lead. Goodrich has it. Jerry West is number 44. Happy Hairston, number 52 in blue. Happy shot from outside. Comes off. Chamberlain for the tip, and Jabbar comes down with it. And here come the Bucks leading 4-0 in the opening minute of play. McLaughlin with a 3-inch advantage in height over Gail Goodrich. It's Jerry West now on Dandridge. As Dandridge works off the baseline, misses badly. Inside, they come out with it and throw it right over here to West. So it's a turnover on Los Angeles, and he gets a grin from Oscar. It could be the Lakers are a little tight. They have won 33 consecutive games. This is the first time they have played here this season. Here is Abdul-Jabbar inside against Chamberlain. He got it. It is 6-0 Milwaukee in the first minute and a half. Oscar after Jerry. McMillan over Dandridge. Jimmy McMillan gets Los Angeles' first points of the afternoon. It is 6-2, and they try to break it with McLaughlin. Goodrich spoils it. Obviously trying to go to McLaughlin, who has the height advantage over Gail Goodrich, but that time Stumpy read it and broke it up. It is McMillan on Dandridge. Jabbar and Chamberlain. He's at 2 in a row over Wilt. He has a total of 6 points, and it's 8-2 Milwaukee. They try to go inside to Abdul-Jabbar. Chamberlain gets the ball. Nice play, but he is forced out of bounds, and the Lakers will keep it. No, he will not. It'll go to Milwaukee. In the collision of the big men, Wilt went over the line, and the judgment of Richie Powers, who was right there. The ball should go to the Bucks, and they have it. Here's Jabbar.